So today we're talking with Rob Rodriguez. He's a marriage and family therapist and alcohol and drug counselor in St. Paul, Minnesota. Welcome, Rob. We're happy to have you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So we like our speakers to start with a quote that maybe guides your work or is meaningful to you in some way. Do you have one?
Yeah, my quote is from my aunt, who was really into cautionary tales and quotes of caution. The one that I attribute directly to her was, "Don't just solve the problem, unwrap the gift that comes with it." I apply that to my work and my life today. All problems to me come with gifts. I try to convey that to people who are struggling. A problem or a conflict is an opportunity for growth and to become stronger and actually begin to utilize our strengths.
Okay, beautiful. So we're gathering people, whoever we can find that's utilizing innovative approaches to addiction and recovery. And we found you. And would you like to tell us a bit about your work?
Sure. Right now, I do some consulting and training with a firm called Mark Hertz Consulting, or Family Recovery Resource Experts. And I work with families primarily and individuals who are struggling with addiction. We do interventions and we do workshops with families that are intensive and help a family move along in recovery. I also I have co-written or co-authored a curriculum called Exploring Trauma with Dr. Covington, Stephanie Covington, and we go around and around the country and present that curriculum, and we're gratified that a few facilities are utilizing that with men. It's a short intervention designed to help a man move from pre-contemplative to contemplation and even preparation and action stage when it comes to relating or identifying their adverse experiences and traumatic experiences and identifying ways that they can maybe begin to heal.
Okay. So it sounds like it does the same thing as motivational interviewing. It's moving people along that readiness scale. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Well, we use, I use the approach of from out there to in here. I want to create an environment where the men can bond quickly, feel safe to share something in just 6 sessions, and begin to identify how trauma has affected them. So we use experiential activities. We use lots of artwork. We use just lots of interaction to help the men become more comfortable with talking about their trauma. One of the things that I do right away at the very beginning is get them to introduce themselves via a word cloud, where they utilize the concepts of a word cloud to highlight the things that are prominent or the things that they want the world to know versus the things that they try to keep away from others and hide. And so some of the clouds can be really telling. Not only, it's better than the usual, hello, my name is Rob and I am in treatment. My drug of choice is alcohol, and I want to get something out of the treatment or whatever. This gives us a lot more data, and it helps them to see their commonalities a little better and break down a lot of barriers very quickly, and they have a lot of fun with it.
So you say that you're traveling around and promoting this or training centers how to use this?
Mm-hmm.
model?
Some centers out of Connecticut. The Connecticut Women's Consortium is a staunch supporter of the project. They actually conducted the first study on it. We also are lucky to be doing this work in prisons in California. We started with a project in Corcoran Prison, it was sort of not very welcome at the beginning by the staff. What they found was that it significantly reduced the incidence of violence and the incidence of disciplinary interaction between the custodial staff and the inmates. And these are men who are inmates whom we have trained on the curriculum, and then they facilitate the curriculum. So and we just got the completion of a study by UCLA, and they are now expanding the grant, and we introduced it at another prison, and they are expanding the grant for us to keep on going with more correctional facilities.
Wow, that's impressive. And so in prison, you're saying that it reduces violence. Is that still a 6-week program?
Yeah, it's it's incredible what it does in a short amount of time, allowing the men to have different tools to express their frustrations and different ways of identifying with what's triggering their anger. Of course, the study was conducted with people who were handpicked to become facilitators. So there are some possible control issues with the study. Nevertheless, the guards and the custodial staff and the warden are ardent supporters now, because what they've seen is, in their words, one of the gentlemen said that we can now deliver a better product to the community at large because men can actually start making changes.
Beautiful.
Mm.
And so you're also using it in some recovery centers. Is it sort of a free recovery?
Right. So one of the centers that utilizes it here in Burnsville, Minnesota, is called River Ridge Treatment Center, and their inpatient facility called The Lodge. And what they have that is really good for them is that they are able to access part of what we do with the curriculum is you should have resources available for these men when they start asking for help, because usually by the third session or so, what you want is one or two men from the group to begin raising their hand and saying, I have to talk to somebody about some things. And then you want to be able to have the resources available for them. So these facilities are blessed in that they have those resources readily available. But if a facility can't do that, they should at least have outside resources that are able. So they use it in the outpatient facility, and what they've done is because it's highly adaptable, they have adapted some other things as post-traumatic growth, for instance, and other exercises that they do to help enhance and adapt to their own particular population.
So how did you start this? How did you get interested in this to develop it?
Well, I started my addiction work kind of traditionally, going through the traditional curricula and all of that. And my initial passion was, of course, helping individuals, and then seeing how families struggled. And wanting to do something to alleviate that. So when I became a marriage and family therapist, it was with a very intense focus on families struggling with addiction. I really wanted to help there and stay focused there. I do treat other conditions, but my primary passion is that. So I wanted to, as I worked in the addiction field, I began working with young adolescent boys, young boys. And I really found that fulfilling. And what happened was that I adapted a curriculum called Helping Men Recover to adolescent development, and I began using it with adolescents. And Stephanie Covington is the author, one of the authors of that curriculum, and she got wind of what I was doing and asked me if I would collaborate on a curriculum for men and men in trauma.
So it sounds very ambitious. You're saying, you said that you need places to refer out, or they need further treatment. Is the sometimes trauma resolved in those 6 sessions, or it's just to raise it and to get the trust and the openness and getting them to look inside?
Right. The big drive for me was I was seeing that we are coming up with all sorts of innovative ways to help men and women. And those are applaudable efforts. And I love that. What I thought was in dealing with my own populations, that it wasn't enough to just create these. It's important that we figure out a way to get the men to the table, get them to actually want to discuss these things, because socialization for males prohibits that. I have a hard time accessing those things. So it's intended to be level 1, so not very much depth. As a matter of fact, that's discouraged, but just about identifying how this has impacted me without going into much detail. Right. We want to keep it level 1 without going into much detail. We want just to set the comfort level to be able to discuss these things and then provide them the resources to do it. So we insist on co-facilitators, actually, because one can actually, while one is presenting, the other one can monitor and keep an eye out on any dissociation or any triggering that a man might be experiencing, and then be able to deal with it in real time and help them through it. One of the remarkable things in all 3 of the studies that were conducted was the amount of completion rates. In 3 studies that we conducted, we had 2 dropouts. That's huge. When we generally think that men don't want to talk about things, that kind of breaks that paradigm.
Yeah, so you found a way to make a safe space enough that they can break through that conditioning and start to open up with each other and get at the pain underneath. Right.
It's very important to set that. And so you follow the core principles of trauma-informed care. It requires us to be nimble and passionate. And it's challenging to be able to present the idea to a man that I serve you, I take care of you. I mean, how many times might a man who has traversed through all of the legal, wranglings of his life, and all of a sudden, what makes me any different as a helper to come up to him and in my heartfelt way say to him, I really want to help you. What's going to make him take that leap with me where he hasn't been able to do it with other people? So I use the concept of samurai when I talk about this. And when we think of a samurai, we think of warrior, we think of fierceness, and we think of swords and battles. But the actual word means one who serves. And so I want to present that dichotomy to a client. I am your servant, but I can also be a fighter for you, and I can help you fight what is troubling you. So I want to demonstrate that from the very beginning. One of the things that I insist on is we can't just talk trauma informed. We have to behave trauma informed. We have to be very conscious of how we are interacting with each other as well as with the clients. I mean, men are highly observant, and they're going to watch whether your actions are commensurate with your words.
Yeah, so that's it sounds like you're really modeling a good parent that they can trust and lean on, maybe for the first time in their lives, to see that kind of healthy male behavior.
Correct. One of the best compliments that I received from a man is, I have been through 5 treatments. We've never talked about this.
Yeah. And so that's shocking that it's probably at the root of that trauma is at the root of addiction.
Right. Yeah.
And that, yeah. So what changes have you seen over the time that you've been working with this? What adjustments have you made, or what have you learned that made you do something different?
Yeah, I think the most positive change that I've seen is the broadening of the mental health lens. I definitely, when I began my career, there were 2 very separate camps, and clinicians and psychiatry and mental health professionals were on one side, and the licensed alcohol drug paraprofessional was on the other side. And I remember seeing that once, and it stung me a little bit, you know. And that separateness actually was to the detriment of individuals. We couldn't communicate very well about them. We were in such separate camps. When you know, to a large extent, that has lessened over the years, and we've become more open to consulting with one another. And I think that's highly you know, it just impacts the treatment that the clients received. I think, you know, when we've embraced as a field a look at adverse life experiences and troubling experiences, and how that might impact the individuals we're trying to help, and how that might impact the way we as helpers react to clients. I think that's huge as well. You know, yeah. I wanted to say that I prefer to view people as I don't believe that I have met a bad client yet. I believe that every one of them is trying to get through life the best way they can with the best tools that they have. And when I hear things such as you're manipulative, I want to think beyond that. And, well, you've got the potential for good people skills. And when you are resistant, is it about me, or is it about my expectations of you? Or are you, you know, demonstrating integrity to yourself and trueness to yourself by standing up for what you believe in? So I want to look beyond the behaviors and think about, what has this person gone through?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so I'm sure that they're not used to being treated like that. And it might be the first time that they're being prized, as Carl Rogers used to say, having an empathic ear and somebody valuing and prizing them.
Yeah. You've said that a couple of times, and that's one of the lines in the curriculum actually is we might be the first persons to show this man dignity and respect. And we should think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you are teaching this to centers, recovery centers, it would seem like they would have to have an approach that matched this.
Right.
So how does that work? Like that they have a good treatment for trauma and that they have this level of care and empathy.
Right. And so we have to use trauma-informed principles when we consider them as well. If I went to a facility in Florida recently, and when I walk into a facility, I want to act in my head. I want to make up, I am a man who just came off a 3-day cocaine binge. And I am really hurting right now, and I am not happy about being here. And I want to see how it feels walking into this facility. And this one facility was so well run. The layout of the rooms, the decor, the staff, it was like everyone was happy to work there. And I mean, everyone. I didn't see an instance of, of anything that would ring a bell for me. And I was just marveling at that, what it would, as I walked in there feeling that way, what it would mean to me to be. And I have been to other facilities that maybe are challenged. They haven't thought about that. And so I want to take not a critical approach, but a trauma-informed approach to them. What has led them to this state? What have they gone through that keeps them from taking that step forward? And how can I help with that? Not that, I want to present myself as a solution, but that I also want to use that as a period of growth for me in how I view other people in facilities, right? We're all going through our own growth period and we're all facing our own challenges. So if they have a willingness to work on helping men in a trauma-informed and trauma-specific way, then I want to see how we can help facilitate that for them.
Hmm. So do you sometimes do consulting on that, like aside from like how do you make this a more trauma-friendly facility?
Yeah, one of the things that we do is have, you start implementing the curriculum. We can come by and watch you run groups. Myself and Rick Dower, who is one of the co-authors in Helping Men Recover, we could have phone or video consultations and talk about the challenges of implementing this. And what I love is the high adaptability. We have fidelity scales that people can utilize for self-evaluation. And I can honestly tell you that if I were to be measured in that, I would fail. I am a wanderer, and I work with what's in front of me. And if I feel a certain need could be met by deviating a little bit for the population right there in front of me, and that's what I'll do. I love it when facilities kind of adapt it and make it their own and make it fit their people. I think that's very important.
Yeah. And how does this, if it's a 6 session, does that mean 6 weeks?
Yeah, it could be 6 weekly sessions, correct?
Okay.
And some facilities have it to where clients can repeat if they want to. Some facilities that are residential have shortened it to 4 sessions. And because they have it's meant to be a closed group, but these facilities run as an open group. And so what they do is they combine sessions 1 and 2 and 5 and 6, because 6 is mostly about endings and ceremony and visualizing the future. So they do a little combination of 5 and 6. Session 5 is about visualizing and creating a different way of looking at life.
So, just considering insurance and what the state of treatment is, is this part of like an inpatient program where they're also doing trauma work at the same time?
Right. So this one facility that does this, each client is assigned a therapist. So they have access to a therapist, and each client, I think each counselor has like three clients. So they get very, very, very deep attention.
It's like a great center. Do you want to give them a plug?
They're called the Lodge, out of Minnetonka. They're part of the River Ridge Treatment Center facilities, and they do very good work. And it's a very small little house. So, but
okay. Is that all men?
All men.
Okay, it's good to know about.
River Ridge also has a woman's facility, but they do their own trauma work through Covington's work, Dr. Covington's work.
Okay.
Trauma and healing trauma.
So, how did you get into this field? You seem like a naturally very warm person and very positive person, and like this is the right field for you. How did you get to be this way?
Yeah, I began as a result of a lot of contemplation and meditation and prayer. I saw a choice before me during my early years of recovery. I could continue in my old career and my old business and chase money and what I call false fulfillment, or I became really aware of an acute statistic. Today, over 220 men are going to die because of alcohol. And over 160 women will die today in the United States because of alcohol, something related with alcohol. And I asked myself, what made me so special? Because it was a period in my life where I wanted to die. And I asked myself at that period, what makes me so special? And what am I supposed to do with this gift? Because I really consider every day that I have, it's bonus. Because I should have been dead a long time ago. And what am I going to do with that bonus? So am I going to seek my own comfort and chase money and prestige? Or am I going to really be useful? And so initially I signed up for an urban teacher program. And then I discovered, I may not have the tolerance to really deal with not only the students but some of the parents that we would do in urban teaching, and so I decided to switch tracks into addiction counseling.
Nice. So how many years have you been in the business?
Since 2005.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did an internship at Hazelden and then an internship at River Ridge Treatment Center, and that's how I became associated with them. And then as I began my work with adolescents, it was with the Anthony Lewis Center here, which is for boys who have been turned down at other places or kicked out of other places. Um, and so they became really dear to my heart, and this is where I discovered, recently when I was at a prison, a warden came up to me and said, it's hard to imagine that you haven't worked with prisoners before. And I said, why is that? It's like it's so natural. You're so connected with them. And I wanted to say, uh, you know, one traffic stop away and I could have been here. Or, they're not very much different from any man I've ever worked with. The men that I've worked with have not gotten to this level yet, or have not, gotten caught. So I don't think, again, I don't believe in that there are any bad clients out there. If I struggle with a client, it's about me.
That's a great point of view, and I'm sure it's a gift to your clients.
It's a gift to me too.
Yeah. So do you have a private practice as well in St. Paul?
No, right now I'm attached to Mark Hertz Consulting and Family Recovery Resource Experts. That's kind of in my vision down the chute, to do private work and continue to do training and consulting.
Okay. So you're mainly working with like prisons and recovery centers and traveling around.
Right, and in my work with Mark Hertz, we do interventions. We do trauma-informed interventions, so it's not your traditional interventions. We invite the whole family in and have family workshops, and at the end of that, either an individual goes to treatment, decides to go to treatment, or the whole family decides to engage in treatment, which is huge in my part. Where when I first started, I became aware that families were so neglected, right? They had a facility that I worked for, had a great or highly touted family program, but families wouldn't attend necessarily. And so initially the idea was, well, families maybe they don't care. What I became aware of, though, is that they just aren't aware of the work that they need to do. They're not, and we have, up until recently, done maybe not such a good job of letting them know the amount of work. So, doing these family workshops and these intensive workshops with the family, which we custom to each family. So we have a long questionnaire, we have interviews with everyone, and then we make their own workbooks, their own, based on theoretical practices, of course, but we explore things like attachment, rupture, trauma, all of those things. And we help a family move very quickly down the continuum. I think families that attend Al-Anon, for instance, will go through the same difficulty that an individual goes when trying to join AA.
Yeah.
The same difficulty. So we want to help move them along that continuum so that when they do join a recovery community for family members, they're ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds really different from what, like the intervention show on TV where it's a couple days, or how long is this process?
Well, sometimes, and we can do the more traditional, but what we eliminate, you got to keep in mind the TV show is about ratings and drama.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want any of that. We want this person to be approached from a loving, dignified place, and for the family to feel good about what happened once it's over. It's very easy for us to come in and whisk somebody away and take them away and leave the family crying and arguing in the kitchen. We don't want that. More important than that, we want the person, when they accept the help, to enter treatment with both feet in the ground. The best compliment I've got was from recently, well, it's happened several times, but recently from a place called the Meadows in Arizona, where the director called me and says, you know, we found it hard to believe that this was an intervention. They weren't angry, they weren't fighting, they weren't resistant, they were ready to do their work. To me, that's a successful intervention.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So how long does it, I know that's not an average, but, you know, is it a week, a month?
Yeah. Well, our shortest turnaround time has been something like 48 hours from the time we met the family to the time of the intervention. My shortest actual intervention in the traditional sense was 35 minutes, and my longest one in the traditional trajectory was 16 hours, and we wound up talking to each other in a cornfield. And after the young man had left the farmhouse and took off running, and we wound up talking in a cornfield, and was able to accept help. But then I've also worked, I recently worked with a family that we started working in October, and the client wound up going to treatment in February. So sometimes
Wow.
it's a long process, but the family did a lot of exploring about how they interact with this illness, how they are interacting with this individual, and the changes they might have to make as they access recovery. So it was, you know, it was huge for them, and they had to get to that place before they could actually engage the identified person.
So do you have any idea of walking in what kind of scope you're looking at?
Well, usually you can decide that. We have a consultation, and then we have a clinical interview, and from that we can consult as a team, and then come up with the best, what we think is the best approach for this family. And so what we want to do is look at the family unit, not just an individual. There are times when, you know, the person's safety or they are so acutely ill that you have to intervene in the traditional sense and do the trauma work later. But but most of the time we want to. By the time we're walking in, we're pretty good at knowing what's going to happen, pretty much, or how to predict, with the caveat that there's always something. There's always a surprise.
Yeah, I suppose, like remodeling a house and taking the wall apart and finding something surprising.
Surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. So what else do you want to tell us that I haven't asked?
Well, one of your questions was about the key elements of the approach, and then the other one was about, you know, how do I define recovery?
Mm-hmm.
The best way that I can do that is relating an experience I had with a client. He identified himself as agnostic, but closer to atheist. And he had no interest in accessing the God thing or AA or any of that. And so what I like to do is completely diffuse that and take away that bone of contention, if you will. So I asked him, what would you say your values, what would you say are values that we should all live by? And he said, love, family, trust, loyalty, respect, honesty. And I asked him, do you think if I went to Alaska and asked a bunch of men the same thing, do you think they'll give me the same answer? And he said, yeah. And I said, how about in Texas? It's sort of a different country. What do you think? And yeah. And I said, how about France? And he said, yeah. And I said, what do you think that is? And he said, because that's what makes us human. That's what helps us build families and communities. That's what binds us together. And so then I asked him, in order for you to continue using the way you've been using, how many of those will you have to violate today? And I said, maybe it's not about, in this time of your life, do you think it's more important to worry about resolving the God issue or look at how you can live up to your values? Because that's what's not on the small print on the bottle. I will make you live against your values someday. So recovery to me is about living up to our values, being true to our inner selves, and not compromising principles. I'm fond of saying that I've been in recovery for a long time and not used a mind-altering substance for a long time, but I've relapsed many times. And that's because relapse is not a part of recovery. Relapse is apart from recovery. And so each one of us is in this continuum with relapse here and recovery here. And I'm either moving towards recovery or I'm moving towards relapse. I have given up the luxury of standing still.
So when you say you've relapsed without using substances, say more about that.
Yeah, old Rob will come back. The judgmental, short-tempered, threatened, fearful, less than, that guy will quickly come back if I don't maintain my course of treatment on a daily basis.
And what is a course of treatment on a daily basis?
Well, I try to practice. One of my challenges is diet, but I try to practice good eating and good sleeping, good rest. I try to keep a balance of activities and keep a good tab on what's encroaching upon what. Good sense of boundaries, meditation, of course, and doing my own therapy work until recently, and continuing to, have that open. Consulting, lots of consulting. I live by this rule for myself. The minute I got it figured out, I better call somebody. Mm-hmm. And so I want to keep that openness going, and then being honest with myself about where I could do better. And but the most important thing for me is asking for what I need. Asking for what I need is a skill that I had to develop as I learned how to have better relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so common, of not, like, being so out of touch, you don't even know what needs to ask for, let alone whether they're met or not.
Right. Yeah. So when I do an exercise with the men called the recovery wheel or the balance wheel, it's like how our life was so out of balance before, with occupying such a huge space and family being squeezed out and all of that, and how today you want to have them, you want to have work and an equal space for this and an equal space and some space for meditation and prayer and taking care of your spiritual needs and all of that. But I also always want to have a little sliver that I call lights out fun, where I get to feed the baby. Because I have a little baby in me. and he doesn't want to do things, and he wants to have fun all the time, and so I have to feed him every once in a while, and go and do childlike things and really enjoy feeding the baby is what I call it. So I encourage my clients to feed their baby, just have some time where you could totally be human and fun and not worry about what people think. As long as you don't hurt anyone, just go out there and figure there's something out there for you that brings out the baby in you, and let that happen for a little bit.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Family recovery resource experts. So if they go under frre.net, you can access our website, frre.net. And
free.net.
Yeah, FRRE. Yeah, and you'll see, pictures of us and our contact information, and some videos where we present our viewpoints on things.
Okay. Well, it's been fascinating talking to you. I love the work you're doing, and I'm loving that your work is getting out via this conference. So I hope more people learn about it and use your approach.
I am really grateful and thankful that you have asked me to do this.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure, Rob.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Go to kilobicenter.com, Radical Recovery Summit, to see the full schedule of speakers and to register to watch these free online September 23rd and 24th in the Radical Recovery Summit 2017.